I'll just go on YouTube. This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the fourth album by singer Beyoncé. Basically, this project is called Four, and it came out in the summer of 2011. So the thing about this particular project here is just the fact that Beyoncé kind of took a decent-sized break after her hit album from 2008, I Am Sasha Fierce, which was a particularly large album. But this album has a different direction towards it. It was just kind of a more seldom and less kind of commonplace and like the theatrics of it kind of album as far as this pitch can happen. Now, Sasha Fierce definitely had some good. Sasha Fierce had some excellent appeal about it. That was pretty damn near a classic when I reviewed that back in early 2024. I want to say I gave it like an 8.75 or a 9 out of 10, something within that pitch. Had a lot of good singles on there. Got basically like the 6th, 7th, or even 8th single as far as this pitch can happen. Balance like the concepts of like some makeshift kind of power ballads, stuff like that with like some dance tunes like Single Ladies Put a Ring on It and Sweet Dreams and some of those type ones. Had a lot of good appeal about that particular product that just really nailed it. But this album is actually going to get a higher score. This is pretty much classic Beyonce album. To be able to say that here, it returns her to form as far as this pitch can happen, which I was not expecting just because I don't remember too many of the songs off this project. Nowadays, I think I do remember hearing at least a couple of these. I do think I at least recall hearing like Run the World, Girls, but apart from that, this album is a relatively seldom type product that just doesn't really get that commonplace type appeal. Now, I looked upon the background of this particular album, and it said that Beyonce wanted to go in a different direction for like the normal contemporary sound that was kind of happening in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, as far as those pitch kind of happened. So, yeah, R&B was kind of in like a strange place between like late 2008 to 2010, early 2011, just because the folks behind it, like it was just a very shape-shifting type era. In early 2009, you had Drake that was kind of shifting things as far as like the R&B sound, and you had Kanye West with 808s and Heartbreak, and then you had The Weeknd in early 2011, some of those type fairs that were kind of shifting like the new sounds. But the typical kind of sound that was when Beyonce was last around with like the T-Pain and Usher type sound, some of those type folks were starting to dissipate a bit, and Trey Songz was kind of doing different things as far as those pitch kind of happen. So with R&B, it was just a little bit different as far as those fairs kind of happen. This is a disco R&B album, to be able to say that. If you like songs like if you like songs from 80s R&B records like The Girl Is Mine and The Lady in My Life by Michael Jackson off of Thriller, some of those type of pitches, some of those kind of more disco, kind of smooth groove type hop type tunes from like those particular days. I want to say there's probably more of those. I don't know as much full bound kind of 80s R&B within those pitches. I know a little bit of Thriller, know a little bit of Purple Rain. I don't remember Purple Rain is full bound because it's been several years since I've listened to that particular product, but some of those type ones is taking it back to more of like the Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Prince type days, like more new wave kind of disco R&B within that relative type sense. This within the appeal that this has some of that type of appeal. It's differential type taste. This is not like when you think of like some of the last hit songs from Beyonce up prior to this point, like Single Ladies Put a Ring on It, Sweet Dreams, some of those type of ones. And like If I Were a Boy, some of those type of singles, it doesn't have like the massive kind of hits on here. Like when you think of Beyonce's Irreplaceable, that instantaneous to the left, or like the pop rap, the pop R&B stretch of like If I Were a Boy, some of those type of ones that just feel like, I mean, there are some makeshift songs on here. There are some ones like Best Thing I Never Had, some of those type of ones, but just within the pitch behind it is just kind of within the tone that this is not like, I mean, this is a good album. I definitely feel like it's a classic album within the sense of what it does, but it's just not commercially like, this is not Beyonce's commercially most successful album. I think when you look after this, kind of a concept of this particular album, it was just a strange album the way this album was kind of oriented, just because the concept that, you know, the continued hits on here, apart, there were only really 2 singles, like the highest charting songs off this album only hit like 20 or so on the Billboard 100, so there weren't any top 10, top 15, there weren't any top 10, top 15 singles, no number ones for Beyonce, which was really strange. It was just kind of the concept. This was the album originally, if you would have talked to me a few years ago, where I would have felt like Beyonce was a queen, but it was just kind of within the concept that she just was not commercially like predominant like she was in like the 2000s and 90s as far as those pitch can happen. But it's just, I don't know, I mean, the concept between this album doing excellently but just not commercially that way, and then like Beyonce's surprise 2013 album just out of nowhere and then just quickly was there and then left real quickly. It was just kind of the concept that Beyonce just didn't have snafus, but it was just kind of concept she just didn't have like those charting hits that you were hearing every day like you did back in 2006 and 2003, 2008, 2009, some of those type of tones. So it's just within the pitch, but I look at it, it's still an excellent album here, just to be able to say that it's just kind of the concept that it just was more elusive, illustrious, and secretive just within the pitch behind it. But it's definitely worth investing in because it did get to the 7th single. It was promoted. It's just within the concept of just the commonplace of just like the singles as to how that kind of went. It just didn't have that anchor as full bound within the pitch. But that's the only real thing about it. It does have some social type bops on here. It's a pretty festive type project. Has some like tunes for a good step out, and in my opinion, this is actually the better album, like I was saying, than compared to Sasha Fierce. This has a little bit more liveliness, a little bit more smoky type feelings about it that just make it more like a contemporary kind of iconic type project. So it's just within the tone behind this real secretive type project that just kind of it was just more of like a quiet storm that kind of took the world by storm in like 2011, 2012, but just didn't really, was kind of more unsung about doing it, just in the pitch as far as that kind of went. So it's just strange for that. It's because really, for the most part, it still continues to not, I don't know how much this album, whether it went multi-platinum or something like that, but it's just kind of one of those ones that, yeah, you have to seek it out more so than like the concept of saying, oh yeah, you remember this project. But I mean, despite the fact that there were 7 singles, this is kind of the concept that this is more kind of an observational type territory. But to just being able to say within that concept, it's still pretty effective type project to kind of get within that pitch. Definitely like the appeal behind this project. Did have some social ones, has the makeshift songs on here. Has like, there are a few songs on this project that has similarities to Outkast songs like Morris Brown and Mighty O, some of those type pitches, and like a baseball game, football game type flair with some of those type pitches. Songs like Countdown and End of Time, and there's probably at least one other one on here that I'm not thinking of that has that particular type of appeal behind it. It's just within the pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. So it's good type aspects, kind of has some of that. Good type pitch, kind of get some of that on here, just taking it back to like the mid 2000s type fair when you would be at like football games. I mean, it's not, it just, that was kind of a style that was abandoned in like the 2010s more oftenly, but there were some tunes that kind of, folks that kind of did that. Killer Mike was pretty good at that. Outkast did those sports game type songs. More folks like that. Trying to think of some other ones like, you know, David Banner and like Bone Crusher, some of those type folks just in the pitch. So it's just within that particular appeal. So this is actually not that southern flavored of like an R&B type project, but it does have some of that relative leftover type appeal towards it. So it's just within the appeal. But yeah, so the 7 singles off this project. So Run the World Girls is a nice one here. Now this is a song I didn't think I remembered, but it's just kind of one that in retrospect just kind of digs deeper into like your subconscious as to one of those type ones that you just kind of somewhat remember hearing, but it's just not as much full bound in terms of like the triumphant kind of appeal that most of Beyonce's records kind of have within that pitch. Just very one that probably would be more in like the melded type moments of just like standard set list as far as those pitch can have. I mean, it was a big deal on Spotify. It has almost 600 million plays. It's just within the pitch behind it. But this is a nice one though. It's like a staccato and basic kind of dance club hop to kind of get here. Just a minor EDM type flavor. Good, but it's just kind of a roundabout type single. This is the pitch behind it. Just this, I would suppose that this would almost be one of those type ones for like more of like a sports game, football game type appeal, but just also within the sense of kind of being like a just mildly flavored kind of EDM. Like Beyonce very briefly touches upon that particular concept and just like something within that. Does feel like a dance club hop on here. Pretty much like a pretty pounding lead single to kind of get within that tone, but it just is very light licked within the pitch behind it. Just kind of like Beyonce is more kind of within the smooth type sense off this project more so than like the fury behind it. It's not to say when you think of like a song like from Destiny's Child, like the lead single, like I forget what that song is called. Like when you think of a heavier kind of more vicious tempo type song like Lose My Breath or Baby Boy off of Dangerously in Love or like I think Dangerously in Love. I'm starting to forget some of these type of songs, but the lead single, I think it's called Dangerously in Love. The song that's with Jay-Z that's off Crazy in Love, that's what it is. Crazy in Love, the lead single off of Dangerously in Love, some of those type of pitches. Just the more typical bravado, even Deja Vu had a little bit more energy within those pitches, but it's just within the tone. I mean, it's a pretty nice one kind of get within that aspect, and this is actually a pretty underappreciated Beyonce song to be able to say here. It only hit like top 20, top 25 like the Billboard 100, but it is a nice one. Real hooky just in the pitch behind it, but it just doesn't like a real staccato type sense it just has within that aspect, but it is a nice one. It's kind of an offhanded type single, just one that it's just kind of like when you think of like, it kind of reminds me of when you think of like Not Afraid by Eminem, some of those type pitches where when you think of Eminem and like his heyday, you probably think of like the Real Slim Shady or My Name Is or Without Me, one of those type of ones, or Crack a Bottle, some of those type pitches, but Not Afraid is just kind of like more second wind type of Eminem within those pitches. It's kind of how it is with Run the World. It's a great song within the pitch behind it, but it just kind of feels like not necessarily secondary, but just not primary in like the concept of like the immediacy of it. That's just in the tone. But yeah, best thing I never had is the second single. This is like an In Spirit kind of sequel to Irreplaceable by Beyonce. Same type of template, some of those type pitches. If I Were a Boy, some of those type ones. Just a stretching kind of rainy day makeshift commute to kind of get here. Just very routine within the pitch. Just typical kind of Target commerce, Starbucks commerce, some of that type pitch. Just blue collar type tracking within the fair behind it. Now this is a good song here. Don't know how super frequently I would listen to this one, just within the spirit behind it. You know, just within within the pitch. This is more makeshift kind of dreary just within the pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. It's just within the aspect if you're not looking for like that kind of drear of just like the malaise of like standard comedy just in like the day to day. It just doesn't have as much full bound appeal, but I'm still going to recommend it just in the pitch because it is a good song. Party is the third single. This is a nice one here. Now this is like a nice synthy kind of disco R&B. I'd have to say this reminds me of like 2003 Beyonce with songs like Rather Be With You and some of those type of ones. Some of those more type melded type bops off of Dangerously in Love. Just really has like that disco kind of smoother R&B type feel. It's like a nice mid-pace type groove and smoky kind of dance type song kind of get within that pitch behind it. Just after hours type of effect. And this is a real snaking type one. When you think of like a song by R. Kelly like Snake, one of those type of ones that just like a winding kind of belly dance type song within the pitch behind it. It's a real nice appeal kind of get for some of these type ones. It's real nice kind of one, not just like a twerk type song within the pitch, but just actually one that you can get like a relative dance to see some women actually be able to dance relatively good within the pitch. Just some good type fares for that. Yes, Love on Top is the fourth single. And this is another one that charted pretty well. This is probably one of the higher charting ones along with Run the World Girls. It's like a throwback to kind of new wave. It's like a throwback to kind of new wave 80s R&B. I'd have to say here reminds me of like, definitely reminds me of Michael Jackson or Prince, some of those type of folks from like the early mid 80s. It reminds me of early mid 80s kind of Michael Jackson or Prince just within that fair other folks like that as far as those picks can happen. It's like a nice smooth groove to kind of get and definitely some heat off this particular album. So basic just kind of R&B hop and bop just within the pitch behind it. And this nice vanilla type one to kind of get within that sense. But this is another one that kind of switches like the tone behind it. Very different from the sort of stuff like not just different from like 2000s R&B, but also different from early 2010s R&B as well. When you think of like some of the more ones that it's not terribly contemporary within the pitch. It just kind of feels like Beyonce has the pitch as Beyonce was kind of having like Beyonce had like a good meld of style just because it was different from like the stuff that was kind of going on. Like I was saying, when you think of like Drake, The Weeknd, and Tinashe and folks like that were kind of shifting like the sounds of R&B around that particular time. This is one that just did not catch that particular attention within the concept. It's not like it was just, giving the middle finger to it or something like that. It's just within the pitch that it was just kind of aspect that it just did something within the aspect of having like some good taste of R&B just to have is like some good kind of extra moments to have like some good type fare for just that concept. It's just within the pitch behind it. So it was just kind of within the pitch behind just as far as saying that it's just kind of within the pitch as far as saying that R&B was just kind of in different places in 2011 as far as those pitch can happen because there wasn't really like a predominant kind of R&B artist. Drake was still kind of in its early stages. So there weren't really like I can't think of like classic R&B albums that really came out in 2010. There just weren't that many. I think in some cases folks can talk about like Janelle Monáe, but there just weren't. Like Trey Songz had a pretty good album in like the fall of 2010, but I just don't remember too many predominant kind of R&B albums from like 2010 or the first half of 2011, or even like in some cases like the second half of 2009 as far as those pitches. Just kind of within that tone. This was kind of some quieter type eras, but this is within the pitch as far as that kind of went to be able to have it. But Countdown is a nice one here. This is the fifth single. It's like a sports game outing in Summerfest. Noise kind of get here. This definitely reminds of Outkast, just an R&B. It's kind of like an R&B variation of some of that activity as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just sports game type fare, just within the fare as far as that particular kind of goes. I just look after it. It's basically like getting an R&B song with some of that marching band kind of football game typeness to kind of get within that context as far as those pitches kind of happen within that. So it's good type fare for some of that. It really works for that sort of appeal. This good song have hot dogs, burgers, some of that type pitch. Just smoke fest, some of that type fare as far as those pitches can happen. Just more contemporary, just kind of date evening. It's kind of date afternoon, like a late day sense. This kind of typical summer trek just within the fare behind it. It's more t-shirt type music just within the fare as far as those pitch kind of having this good type tone for some of that typeness. Almost kind of vanilla within the sense of like a standard kind of outing. This kind of reminds of like Countdown kind of feels like 2006 Beyonce, I'd say, just in the pitch, but it's good type fare. I Care is the sixth single. Now this is another makeshift type one, just like Best Thing I Never Had, just not as rainy day, not as melodramatic. I'd have to say it's like a glittery kind of power ballad commerce kind of get here, just a makeshift kind of typical day. I'd have to say tugging, fiery groove about this particular one, and it's got some rumination about it. Just says like some tugging kind of fiery groove and rumination kind of say about this particular song. It's pretty lit type one to kind of get here. So it's just a nice one, good concept for Beyonce to be able to nail these particular makeshift kind of rumination type songs just within the pitch of some standard kind of trekking smacking just within the fair. A little bit more of like a strengthy type ballad within the sense, but it does work for that appeal. Just to say about this product, this is a pretty tinged type product just within the tone. This is not just kind of going through the motions or phoned in kind of vocals just within the pitch. I mean, you feel like the electricity that Beyonce kind of has on this particular album. It's an aspect that she feels pretty strengthy on this project, not just in terms like empowerment, something like that, but just the concept when, you know, when she's pissed off, you get the sense of that particular concept. When she's smoky, you get the sense of that just from the pitch. When she's excited, you get the sense behind it. Just has the aspect of being able to display the emotions and be able to have the concept of having some backing behind it. So it's just a good type tone to be able to have that particular type of feel. Just really nails like, you know, accentuates like the concept of the way that some of these type of ones kind of happen on here just in the pitch. It does that pretty well. And then End of Time is a nice one as well. Now this is like a similar kind of outdoor sports. End of Time is like a similar kind of outdoor sports hop to Countdown. I'd have to say here, just some arena R&B. I'd say in a certain sense, just some good times, just smoke, good song to smoke to within pitches like that. Just lots of people around as far as those pitches can happen. Just whether it's just like some sort of outdoor fest, some sort of picnic or cookout, some of that type fair. Just within the concept of something that like would be like a Woodstock, something that would be like a Woodstock type thing, just some sort of hot day type fair, just in the pitch behind it. I mean, basically pretty similar like a song like Countdown, just without the pitch of like some sort of ball game going on as full bound just in the pitch. Just maybe not as much full bound focused on the activity, but just the more concept of like socializing and hang out just in the pitch behind it is kind of more, whether it is just a smoke fest or just more lively kind of R&B type good times just in the pitch behind it. But works for a lot like that particular type of appeal. Good type concept there. But yeah, that's the 7 songs on this particular album. So just to say, so out of the 14 songs, I'm reviewing the deluxe edition with the 2 extra songs, Start Over and I Was Here. So to talk about the particular songs I recommend on here, basically I recommend every song minus 2 of them. The only 2 songs I don't recommend would just be School and Life and I Was Here. So basically both those, School and Life is just kind of a more optimistic type commerce just within the pitch behind it. I mean, it had some decent kind of bubbly kind of just commerce type appeal within it, just a good type stretch to kind of get within the tone. Just kind of a little bit more of like a more optimistic version of like a song like I Care, one of those type ones, but just the appeal behind it was not as full bound for that particular pitch. Just didn't see the frequency of how often I'd listen to that one. And then I Was Here was just another stretcher of one, but this one's just a little bit more of like an empowering type one that just didn't really have the aspect of as much full bound kind of, just didn't have as much consistent kind of affability for me as far as this pitch can happen. It's not, I mean, some of these type of ones work within the appeal behind it, but it just is the concept of just how often I'd probably choose some of these type of songs as far as the pitch behind them. I mean, there's definitely some good gems on here within the pitch behind it. So yeah, this album's going to get a 10 out of 10 within those pitches. I'd have to say basically every other song on here minus those 2 I recommend just in the full boundedness. So 12 out of 14 would definitely be a 10. So I look after some of these type of ones. Rather Die Young is a nice one on here. It's like a hazy kind of evening gauze kind of get within that pitch. Just a nice in motion kind of flavor to kind of have. Just some neighborhood kind of, this song is like some good neighborhood after moments to kind of have before like situating, before figuring out what's going to happen for like the rest of the afternoon or evening or night as far as those pitches can happen. Just a good concept. Just has a nice pacing. Kind of a song that gives goosebumps within the pitch behind it, just in the tone of just having some excitement, just within the flavor of just having like that excited, just getting towards like the primer for like night type fare as far as those pitches can have with it. Just good type tone for that. Good nice flavors for that. Dance for You is a quality one as well. It's like some ballroom music and kind of continued dance music later in the evening. I'd have to say here, just a smoky kind of, has a very smoky type feel, which is pretty dope within the concept. Basically like a good nice one to go with songs like Party and like Dance for You is like a good song to go with songs like Party and Love on Top as far as those pitch can happen. Just that same sort of new wave kind of disco R&B within a sense. It's a little bit more melted and it's like some syrupy kind of romantic drip to kind of have here within the pitch behind it. This one, probably if like Party and Love on Top would be more of like 7:38 is like the dance type fare starting to happen. This would probably be more of like 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. Just pitch like that. Just not quite at the end of the night, but just within the pitch where things are starting to wind down. It's a little bit more smoky, romantic, a little bit more smoky and romantic just within the pitch behind it. I Miss You is a nice one as well. Just like an oily and sleek kind of after hours ring kind of get within that tone. Just She Don't Like the Lights type music kind of get within that pitch behind it. Just a nice evening retire to kind of having just an overall hot song. Yeah, I would say I Miss You is just kind of a more luscious type one, just oily within the sense behind it as far as those pitch can happen. When I say She Don't Like the Lights type music, just within the pitch, it's kind of that more dim kind of haze, it's more dim lights, just tinted, it's kind of more tinted room, black light type music just within the pitch. The lights not completely on, not looking bright, white room, yellow room, pitches like that, but just just kind of more orangish, kind of more tinted, kind of evening type fare, just within the concept of more of like a black room, something like that relative type pitch behind it. It's more after effect, just within the tone. The type fare as far as those pitch can happen, just some good after hours retired. The Weeknd is really excellent at these sorts of songs, just within the pitch. Drake can do those within certain senses. It's just not like Drake's a little bit more melodic within a sense. Drake's a little bit more sprightly within a sense, but this is just a lot more just sultry, just kind of more, just kind of ambient, just kind of in a more, just kind of smoky type sense, just to say, it's just good type tone for some of that. Just the smoke of just like the gazing as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. It's a good type tone, but I look after it. Start Over is a nice one as well as like a glossy kind of power R&B stretcher kind of get here. This one goes pretty well with I Care, I'd say, just a strengthy kind of worship commute kind of get within that sense, and this is like some good evening glaze. So there are some good just commute type songs kind of get within that pitch. This probably could have been like a factory kind of vanilla single, I'd have to say about Start Over. Very similar just within the pitch behind it to I Care, some of those type ones, just within the tone behind it. I also feel like Rather Die Young is like a relative kind of stretcher within a sense. That one's a little bit more, Rather Die Young is just a little bit more of like the after moments of some hangout type fare before stepping out, but it's just within the pitch. Some of these type ones do have like some of these type ones do have like that typical kind of Tuesday, Wednesday type commerce within the pitch. I mean, Rihanna's really good at these particular type songs, and Kelly Clarkson, some of those type folks, Avril Lavigne in certain senses. Beyonce does these pretty well. This one has more of these. I guess this one doesn't have as many as Sasha Fierce does, but they are on here within the pitch, just Beyonce, so some good type for that, for just the pitch behind it, just some good typical kind of, like I was saying, Tuesday, Wednesday type commerce. And then 1+1's a nice one. This is probably one of my more favorite songs out this particular album in terms of like the appeal. This is like a good sunset glaze and extra moments kind of R&B to get here. This is not a dance song or a makeshift song, but it simmers pretty well within the pitch, and this is like some good nice day wind down and kind of have. This is like, I would almost say like the opposite of like a song like Rather Die Young, where Rather Die Young is just like a primer for like some further step out, getting the songs like Party, Love on Top, and Countdown and some of those type of pitches, I'd have to say, and like Dance for You, some of those type fares. But 1+1 is just one of them ones. It's like a smoky type song, just sunset. Just 1+1 is like some Pink Skies kind of sunset glaze kind of go within that pitch. Just a smoother type one. Really like the production, just the simmering type appeal. That particular one just really has the aspect behind it. Just overall nails the glimmer and the kind of just. I mean, some of these songs do have that tugging type aspect about it, so it's just some good type tones to be able to get some of that type fare as far as those pitches kind of happen. It nails it. That's the particular pitch behind it as far as those pairs can happen. So 12 out of 14 would be a 10 out of 10. Most of these songs on here I do recommend full bound as far as those pitch kind of go. 7 singles just within pitch. Like I was saying, it's not like at the forefront in terms of like the commercial aspects. Beyonce tried some new things on here which did work, but it's just kind of the concept of that casual wise for some reason. It's not these songs didn't connect. It's just kind of the concept that it just felt like R&B had a lot of differential type styles and kind of shape-shifting in 2011, where it just felt like, it's not that folks didn't have time for Beyonce, but it's just kind of the concept that it just was probably like a real scattershot type year as far as being here, being there, just all the different tones that kind of went along with this. So it's just kind of within the pitch. Excellent type stuff, but it's just within the tone that it kind of put Beyonce in a differential type position, just because she was not the normal kind of predominant songstress that she was in like the 2000s. Just different type pitch, but it worked for what it was. Just kind of the concept. I look after it. Did manage to get the 7th single, and also on top of that, Beyonce was pregnant around this time, so it's just another type pitch. Blue Ivy. She was in the process of having Blue Ivy around this particular time, so it's within the pitch of just that initial, just the bonus after effects of that particular pitch as far as those fares can happen just within the tone. So it's just within the fare, just being able to say I look after it. Good type project here as far as those fares. Good type off to the wayside type project to kind of get within those pitches, just within the concept of like being able to have these quality songs, but just within the after effect of just not having like the normal kind of full bound commercialness that this product normally would have. So it's just within the pitch, but some excellent type fares. So the social score, as a result, I'll probably give the social score like I mean, because it got the 7th single, you would think that would mean it would get a 10 out of 10, but just within the pitch behind it, I feel like maybe more of like a 9.5. Maybe it would be more of like a 9.5 out of 10, just because the aspect that the highest charting songs off this particular album got to like 20 on the Billboard 100. Now, most of this album does have over 100 million plays. All of these songs are pretty, because it's Beyonce, a lot of these do have like 500, 400, 300 million plays on Spotify within the pitch. You would think within the casual aspects that this was an easy kind of home run and highlight, but it's just within the pitch that it just is not super much as reference, which is just kind of the tone. It just is interesting that when you think of like all-time, when you think of like greats from like the R&B decade, when you think of R&B greats from the decade of the 2010s, this doesn't seem as frequently brought up compared to like The Weeknd or Trey Songz or even Usher, just the sort of things that were going on. This is just kind of a quieter type one. So in the pitch, and just being able to say that it's kind of a different type tone. But nowadays, I recognize that it is an excellent type 1. This was very ignored for whatever reasons. This was the pitch behind it. But yeah, 10 out of 10, or I have to say 9.5 out of 10 social, 10 out of 10 scores for this pitch can have. In terms of the future, like Beyonce put out an album in early 2024, Cowboy Card or something like that, as far as those pitches gonna happen. She has like I want to say this is going to be a part of a trilogy, but then there was a Beyonce album that came out in 2022, so there's some pitches going on with Beyonce as far as those fairs gonna happen. We're gonna see what's gonna happen as far as that particular fair kind of goes. But this is definitely an excellent type 1. Once again, just the quieter type appeal of this project makes it seem like an offset of a project just because it just doesn't have the commercial smashes on here, but it definitely is worth the investment. I think in terms of like the Spotify popularity, that should designate to say that it is an easy hitter. On top of this, the fact me giving this like a 10 out of 10, just the 7 singles, some of that type pitch. So it does have the appeal, but it's just not commercially immediate. But that's not like a falter because this album's just overall pretty vastly excellent.